Hi, welcome to our Research Onboarding Orientation webinar on Corporate and Foundation Relations. I'm Whitney Riley, Executive Director of Corporate Relations.
And I'm Corey Rutz, Director of Foundation Relations.
Thanks for joining us. Let's start with our org chart. We are a central service organization within the Vice President for Research's office. We serve all IU campuses throughout Indiana, and we divide our time and energy two ways: corporate relations and foundation relations.
The Foundation Relations team consists of Jennifer Lawrence, our Senior Executive Director, myself, Corey Rutz, our Assistant Director, Josh Moore, and Christy Borchardt, our Administrative Assistant and Project Manager.
On the corporate relations side, we have me as the Executive Director, and Tracy Wishmeyer is the Director, and our Senior Administrative Assistant and Project Manager is Clarissa Tester.
For both sides of our team, we work on all campuses, so anybody listed here is available to support you at IUPUI.
That's right. Both the corporate relations and foundation relations teams are here to support you in two important ways. That is securing philanthropic gifts and securing support for your research through non-governmental grants. And before we get into the specifics of how we do those two things, it's important to underscore the difference between gifts and non-governmental grants, or NGGs as we call them at IU.
Typically, philanthropic gifts are support that comes from individual donors to the university, and those gifts would come to the IU Foundation. Non-governmental grants typically come from organizations, in our case corporations and private foundations, and are routed through the Office of Research Administration. So sometimes organizations do give their funding in a way that makes it look more like a gift and would go to the IU Foundation. However, increasingly, we're trying to route everything from organizations to the Office of Research Administration. So it makes a difference in how you actually approach the organization. So we want to talk a little bit about what makes those things different. Probably the biggest thing is non-governmental grants require deliverables. So they might have some reporting, and they might expect certain specific results from their funding. When you submit a request for a non-governmental grant, typically there's a budget required and an award letter or a grant agreement that needs to be signed. The other thing that is important is that grants often are project specific and not unrestricted funds. And therefore, if the project isn't carried out the way it's supposed to be carried out, grant funds come with a clause that says the funds need to be returned in most cases. Gifts do not have this clause, and anything that goes to the IU Foundation cannot have any kind of what they call a clawback clause.
That's right. An easy way to remember it is, think about when you give someone a gift. Do you expect anything back? Well, if you do, maybe it's not a gift. In addition to calling on either of our teams to support you in this type of activity, there are a few online resources that we'd like to point out.
Most of these resources are designed to help you find funding or help you determine if an organization you're approaching is the right one for the funding you're seeking. And all of them can be found through IU's research homepage, which is research.iu.edu. The first one listed there under the research homepage is the Foundation Directory Online. This is an online database which is managed by an organization called the Foundation Center. And it's basically a research resource to learn more about the organizations that give money, the private foundations, which includes corporate foundations that are separate from the corporations that support them. And you can learn a little bit about what these organizations have given in the past, what their giving areas are, who to contact to find funding. But probably the most useful thing you can do in Foundation Directory Online is to search by giving area. So if you're looking for money for, say, engineering and technology, you could put that in as a keyword and search the different organizations that give in that area and find some that are aligned with your work. The next is Pivot, which is an RFP database. RFP stands for Request for Proposals. So Pivot essentially shows you all of the requests that are out there from corporations and foundations for research proposals, investigator proposals, project or service proposals. It's a resource that's provided through the library websites at IU, and it's a very useful service. You can actually set up a weekly email that will be tied to a number of keywords that you specify and other filters. And what I would recommend is increasingly sort of honing your keywords that you're using for Pivot. The next is the RFP Bulletin, which is a list of open requests for proposals on our website, which is listed there. It can also be found through the research website. And the RFP list is basically a curated list of opportunities that are available and that the university is eligible to apply to. So you can go there and look at it on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis. You can use keywords to search, and you can find opportunities that are a good fit for you, knowing that these are for everybody at the university. So a good number of the opportunities are not going to apply to you. However, this is one place to find things that you might not otherwise see. And the last one on the list is the limited submissions page. Limited submissions includes opportunities that Indiana University is only allowed to submit one or two or another limited number of proposals to. They might be limited by campus, they might be limited by the entire university, so all campuses, but in some way we cannot submit more than a certain number. This website is important to look at because it has internal deadlines. That is, what is the internal deadline to compete for these opportunities? And then the external deadline. So once someone is selected from the university, what deadline do they need to get their proposal to the external entity to? If you have any questions about any of these, you can always contact us, and we'll share that information later on.
Let's talk a little bit about the corporate and foundation relations overall strategy and how we approach supporting you.
Well, the first thing to note is that our team focuses on national foundations and corporations while maintaining strong local connections. What this means is that our work is really designed to try to establish relationships between IU and between our faculty and schools and the big foundations and corporations that are investing in research across the country and at a large scale. We also have lots of local connections that will be investing in research and projects with IU in a lot of cases because they have an affinity for the university, they're located nearby, they may have a lot of alumni working for them. But while we do both of those, increasingly we're trying to make sure that our faculty are connected with those national funders that would be funding things at a larger scale.
That's right, and the most effective way to do that is working directly with you, our faculty and academic leaders, so we can better understand the research projects and the things that you have going on, best position you for research awards, hopefully help you meet other colleagues to pursue interdisciplinary opportunities, and create projects and programs that underscore the university's overall priorities. Our goal is really to create and enhance large institutional relationships where the connection isn't housed in a specific department, but rather dispersed across the entire institution.
We also collaborate closely with school and unit-based development officers. These are the fundraisers that work in your schools and units, and these are sort of your first frontline people. They are committed to the work that you are doing, and they're motivated to raise money specifically for you within your school or unit. We are there to support them, and our success is their success, and vice versa. So it's the development staff within your units are important resources for you, but it's another resource to think about as you're looking for funding. If you haven't reached out to them, you can do so, and we will work closely with them in any case.
Absolutely. One of the things that we want to do coming alongside those development officers is increase the number of relevant organizational funding opportunities. Part of the value that our teams can bring to you and your unit is that focus on organizational support, whether it's corporations or private foundations. Development officers, in large part on IUPUI's campus, are focused on realizing philanthropic support from individual alumni and friends. And so where we can add the capacity to pursue opportunities related to organizations that aren't individuals, by and large, they're happy to have us do that. And of course, we're happy to do it.
We're also working to pursue full integration with the research offices. And what that means is a lot of the research offices at IU are focused on either internal funding or federal funding. Non-governmental grants tend to fall outside of the traditional focus areas. And I think what our team tries to do is provide just that sort of unique knowledge or unique understanding of how these kinds of organizations like to interface with the university or with faculty. And we work very closely with the research offices, both the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Research here at IUPUI, as well as the Office of Research Administration, which you're ultimately going to have to be working with when applying for funding and accepting your award.
Now, I'd like to take some time to talk specifically about what the corporate relations team does. First and foremost, we engage corporations and corporate foundations to build those institutional partnerships between industry and academia that we just touched on. And what's right in front of us in our core area of focus is the non-governmental grants and that research support from corporations, as well as philanthropic gifts. But we are also more and more involved in supporting our growing tech transfer team, coordinating with folks in licensing and trademarks and sponsorships, getting corporate executives on advisory boards. We're really working to have a more holistic approach to the way the institution engages with companies. Towards that end, we serve as consultant and strategist with faculty and staff. Sometimes it is more appropriate for you as an individual faculty member to go and have the conversation with the company and discuss the specifics of your work, and you don't need us to be there. And in those situations where it's appropriate, we hope to educate and empower you to take that sort of thing on yourself and be successful. We, when appropriate, engage IU leadership in the process overall. That could be early on when we're working to cultivate a corporation, or later after they've made a significant commitment and we want to bring a vice president or a dean or even the president into the conversation to show our appreciation. A very critical thing that we do is offer full support for bringing corporate reps to campus. The more that you want to call upon us to coordinate and implement campus visits when you're working with a corporation that needs to see your laboratory, understand the specifics of what's happening in the classroom with your students, or for whatever reason you want to bring them here, please call upon us to help make that happen and make that successful. Lastly, on this slide, something that we really work hard to do is integrate those established advancement best practices into the research development process. That's a lot of the, we'll call it more touchy-feely sort of things related to your traditional fundraising processes and procedures that we think can add a critical element of relationship building between corporations and corporate foundations and you and your department and the work you're doing to make it, take it away from being a transactional, give me X amount of money for Y project, to a multi-year, multi-project, mutually beneficial partnership. I'd like to share a few specific examples of what the corporate relations team has done to support growing the industry-academia partnerships at IUPUI. Recently, we staffed a dinner with some executives from Infosys. They're making a significant investment in Indianapolis, and IUPUI is well positioned to be involved with that activity in the months and years ahead. We attended, we have for the past several years attended an annual conference with faculty from the School of Optometry. That's resulted in some great conversations, not just around their corporate partner program, which is an ongoing opportunity with engagements throughout the year to connect with faculty and students, built around a lot around brand building for the company, but we've also identified some opportunities to make some major solicitations for naming some spaces in that school, scholarships and professorships, things like that, and as well as, of course, research partnerships and even some clinical trials there in the School of Optometry. We've also been well positioned to serve as the lead for inquiries and engagements with industry partners around one of our grand challenges, the Prepared for Environmental Change Grand Challenge. In particular, I have taken some faculty off campus to engage with companies at their locations, as well as hosted a number of visits to IUPUI and to IU Bloomington. And we have a number of different proposals being considered by 3 or 4 different companies related to that project. I included this next example to underscore that our support isn't limited to research activity or the quote-unquote hard sciences. We've also been involved in supporting the Arts and Humanities Council down at IU Bloomington, including a recent trip down to Mexico City with a number of IU representatives. The conversations that are resulting from that trip include potentially bringing a youth orchestra up from Mexico for a residential experience in collaboration with the Jacobs School, as well as several solicitations to help underwrite the overall Mexico remixed programming that happens in the spring down at IU Bloomington. And going back to integrating the advancement best practices into the research process from a few slides ago, we also helped with a first of its kind signing ceremony around a $2.5 million research agreement. This sort of thing normally would have happened very quietly, emails back and forth and that sort of thing. But we had the opportunity to bring the Chief Technology Officer and the Director of Research and Development for this particular firm to campus. And so we got the Dean, the PI, and a few of his co-PIs, as well as the Vice Provost for Research to be a part of a signing ceremony, ceremonial pins that they all got to keep, pictures taken that everyone received a copy of, and IU Communications came and wrote up a nice piece that went out through the different newsletters and other media channels that we have, just elevating the profile of the industry academia partnerships that IU has is really a critical part of building on the momentum that we have at IUPUI, and I think will yield additional opportunities for you and your faculty colleagues in the months and years ahead.
Okay, so now let's talk about what foundation relations does, which is similar to what corporate relations does, but private foundations act a little bit differently than corporations. So our job is essentially to develop and enhance IU's relationships with private foundations, with an emphasis on positioning IU faculty and IU as an institution to compete for future grant opportunities. We really want private foundations to think about IU when they're thinking about going into a new research direction, or when they're thinking about who's the best in a particular field. If we have a strength in that field, we want them to know about that. So some of it is just us spending time proactively making sure foundations are thinking about IU, that we are on their radar. For example, if there's an education foundation like the Spencer Foundation that funds education research, we try to go to places where folks from the Spencer Foundation are, conferences, meetings, and talk about some of the work that's going on at IU, and also know about some of the work that they are funding at IU, so that when we have those conversations, we can make sure to reinforce the good work that's already being done. We identify and facilitate relevant investigator programs, research activities, research project collaboration opportunities, and service and community engagements. What this means is that we are aware of all of the different funding programs that private foundations have, and we try to make sure that researchers and staff at IU are in the right position, have the right partnerships, and have the right research or program elements to compete for that funding from private foundations. For some investigator programs, they might be looking for a certain combination, say between a biologist and a computer scientist. For some research activities, they might be looking for certain kinds of community partnerships to see applied research activities. For other research and project collaboration opportunities, it might be an organization that's looking to have an impact broadly on a community or a particular group within a community, which requires both research and service activities. We can also help connect with community organizations. We can help connect with other researchers at IU, either at IUPUI or at IU Bloomington or any of the other regional campuses. And we can also connect internally in the university to administrative officials or maybe staff that you need to support your work. We serve as a consultant, an advisor, and a strategist for development officers and for faculty considering foundation approaches. Most of the development officers in your schools and units are really focused on individual fundraising, finding support from individual donors. So oftentimes we can provide that little bit of extra expertise on a private foundation that will help them if they're working with you on finding funding for your research. And we'll work directly with faculty as well. Faculty can reach out directly to us to learn more about foundations that might fund their work, or maybe to learn about one foundation that they're thinking about applying to. We distribute information on funding opportunities, and we develop and support resources to find opportunities and to request funding. So we talked a little bit about some of the resources earlier that we have tried to make sure are available to you as faculty. We talked about the Foundation Directory online and Pivot, but we also will try to push out information on funding opportunities to the right faculty. If we know about your research, which we're always looking internally to find out more about the research that's going on, we might send an opportunity directly to you via email, or we might even call you to talk a little bit more about what you're doing and if it's aligned with an opportunity that we've found. We also try to make sure that the resources are available to request funding. If you are, for example, approaching a particular foundation that has a strange budget, we might be working on developing sort of a budget template that you can use to easily change your research budget into when you're trying to request funding. Finally, we provide research, additional analysis, and assistance with private foundations generally. Anytime you need more information on a foundation, whether it be because you're going to submit a proposal, or maybe you're going to be visiting with someone from that foundation during a conference, or maybe if you just wanted to find out more about whether they're aligned with your research, that's what we're here and available to do for you. Some specific examples of what the Foundation Relations team has done in recent years includes institutional coordination with the Provost's office at IU Bloomington, OVPR, the Office of the Vice Provost for Research, and ORA, the Office of Research Administration, providing support for leadership cultivation visits to the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation for the Provost. This meant providing briefings, helping to schedule meetings, and just preparing the Provost to go and talk to the Foundation to know more about what our history was with them, what their interests are, and trying to set her up for success. The result of this was a $1 million grant for research in the arts and humanities at IU Bloomington. We also worked with all campuses at IU on the Howard Hughes Medical Institute Inclusive Excellence Program, which is a campus-wide program, a campus-wide funding opportunity that came out over the last few years. We advised and collaborated with staff and faculty on the Bloomington and Indianapolis campuses, and this resulted in invitations to both campuses to submit full proposals in the final round. So this was a multi-round process where you submitted a pre-proposal, and then some campuses were invited to submit a full proposal. Both did submit a full proposal in October 2017. We have also assisted with various ongoing approaches to local foundations. At IUPUI, the NINA Scholars Program has been operating for many years on a year-to-year basis. So it's gotten a couple $100,000 in funding every year from the Nina Mason Pulliam Charitable Trust. Well, we recently worked with the group that operates that program and facilitated discussions with the trust to actually secure a $3 million endowment for that program, specifically for the scholarship component, which will ensure that the program goes on forever, essentially. We also worked with dozens of faculty and units to approach the Allen Whitehill Clues Charitable Foundation over the last couple years, as well as the Central Indiana Community Foundation. These kinds of foundations that are located here in Indianapolis fund a lot of activity. The Clues Charitable Foundation supports arts and humanities activity in the city. And so there's a lot of units at IUPUI that are interested in approaching them. We've had great success over the last couple of years in funding a number of different projects here. The Central Indiana Community Foundation is the largest community foundation in the state, and it's located right here in Indianapolis. And we probably get dozens of folks interested in approaching CICF every year. But we talk to them a lot, and we really know what they're interested in. So through that process, we can kind of help advise staff or faculty about whether or not it makes sense to spend time approaching the Central Indiana Community Foundation or not. And we've had good success with them over the last few years as well. We also work to make new resources available to IU faculty to identify foundation funding. This includes maintaining a list of RFP opportunities that we talked about earlier. We update this every 2 weeks, so faculty can keep going back there and seeing new opportunities on a regular basis, using keywords to hone in on those areas that are most relevant to them. We worked with the research offices and the libraries on each campus to secure the Foundation Directory Online Enterprise Access recently. This ensures that faculty and staff can access the Foundation Directory online from any computer via the library website. The resources that we have are not perfect, and we're always interested in feedback to make them better or knowing what gaps there might be for faculty. We also support leadership. IU leadership routinely go out and talk to private foundations on behalf of faculty and schools to make sure that these private foundations know the good work that's going on here. We organized and advised on National Foundations visits for Vice President Fred Cate to talk a little bit about the Grand Challenge research programs that he's launched, as well as other researchers and research areas at IU. We sent him out to San Francisco to talk to the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, and the Science Philanthropy Alliance, which is a group of donors that have gotten together to support science research. We sent him out to Chicago to talk to the MacArthur Foundation, to talk to the Joyce Foundation, and to talk to the Energy Foundation, as well as the Kinship Foundation, which administers a program called the Searle Scholars Program, which is a limited submission investigator program. So there's all kinds of different opportunities we're trying to make sure are available to our faculty and that they are best positioned to apply to.
All right, that's it. Thank you very much for spending the last half an hour or so with us learning about the corporate and foundation relations teams. We look forward to working with you to help you make good things happen here at IUPUI.
As you can see, all of our contact information is right here for you. Please email us or call us if you have any questions. The corporate folks are on the left and the foundation folks are on the right.
Thanks again.